Well, everyone has that friend from high school or college who always had that boyfriend or girlfriend no one ever saw. You know, it was that older woman who was away at college, or that model whose schedule required him to travel the world. For me, it was my fraternity brother, James. For 4 years, he talked every day about his long-distance girlfriend whom we never met. Sure, he would go back home sometimes to visit her, but honestly, it became sort of a running joke. Hey guys, where's James? Oh, you know, he went home this weekend to visit his girlfriend. Well, it was commencement weekend of our senior year, and we had a party for the graduation. Friends and family came from far and near to celebrate this special weekend, and guess who showed up with James? That's right, the infamous Jennifer. James walked into that party with her on his arm, and I'm pretty sure you could have picked our jaws up off the floor. We were in such astonishment. Of course, you can bet he introduced her to everyone. At one point, I'm pretty sure I saw him introducing her to my grandmother in the corner. In fact, I've never seen an expression on someone's face quite like his. It was pride, but I think it was also a sense of relief. Finally, once and for all, he could prove she actually lives. Well, imagine trying to convince someone that you are among the living. I mean, it's one thing to prove your long-distance relationship exists, but it's another to have to say to those who know you well, no, seriously, I promise, it's me. That's what Jesus is up against, not only in this morning's reading, but in every post-resurrection appearance. It's almost a ritual of sorts. There are wounds and blood. He asks his disciples to touch and feel, but in Luke's version, he even takes it one step further, asking them for something to eat. Which, if you're trying to prove you're physically alive, may be the best evidence. You need only visit an elderly friend who's lying weak in the nursing home, unable to eat, to know that food is essential in order to live. It's the same reason doctors won't even consider discharging you from the hospital after surgery until you can, at the very least, keep down a spoonful of that pudding or those tasty Jell-O cubes. The point is, Jesus seems to want them to know he's not just an apparition or some ghostly, ethereal being. No, he's flesh and bone, just like you and me. It's no wonder these disciples have a hard time believing. After all, in our heart of hearts, that's not really how we think about resurrection, is it? I can remember listening to a radio show a few years ago on the morning drive to work. The DJs were talking about some news they'd heard that Costco had decided to actually start selling caskets on an experimental basis in a few of their leading stores. Geez, can you imagine? Said one of them. You go into Costco and you say, I think I'll pick up 48 rolls of toilet paper today, and while I'm here I may as well get a casket. Right, said the other. I mean, can't you see yourself wheeling that thing out in the parking lot of one of those buggies? I mean, how are you supposed to get in your car? Call your Uncle Liam and tell him to back up the boat trailer so you can get your casket in your car? Obviously, the DJs were thoroughly enjoying themselves when one of them shifted to a more serious tone. Really, though, I think this is great. We spend way too much on our funerals anyway. I've even told my family when I'm gone, if you need to cut a corner, do it on the casket. Yet better yet, just cremate me. Besides, this body, it's just a shell. The real me will be gone somewhere else. Don't waste money on a casket, but if you insist, make sure you get it at Costco. It's a good comedic bit for sure. But it also captures a deeper truth regarding the church's theology around life and death and resurrection. While it's overwhelmingly clear the gospel writers want to present Jesus' resurrection as physical, most Christians understand our own to be, well, more spiritual. At least that's the narrative we hear almost every funeral and memorial service. Our souls are immortal, merely imprisoned by the body, but released at death to go home and be in heaven, to live in peace eternally. Which was, at least generally speaking, the way that I used to think. That is until I heard Mary's story. She was a young, physically disabled girl who died in her early teens of a rare genetic disease. A colleague of mine was called upon to preside at her funeral. As Mary's mother and my colleague were planning for the service, the mother asked, seemingly out of nowhere, "Do you believe in the physical resurrection?" My colleague danced around an answer that included the same sort of disembodied spiritual resurrection which most of us believe. She concluded her answer with, "If I'm honest, I'm not sure it really matters." To which Mary's mother replied, "It matters to me. For years, my daughter's body has been shunned, laughed at, and an everyday challenge for her and for our family. I need to know that now, or at least someday in the future, that her body will be celebrated and loved, just the way God created it." If I'm honest, her story made me question everything I'd come to believe about our bodies, which isn't anything new for people of faith. After all, the Church Universal has struggled with what to think about and how to understand our physical bodies from its inception. In fact, the issues of the church we grapple with even today are ultimately arguments not about Scripture, but about how we theologically understand our physicality. Why is the divorced man still a pastor while the ordained woman still waits for a call? Why is the abuser not shunned and shamed while the LGBTQ community still remains excluded? While Christians may not agree on the answers to these questions, there is one thing we cannot deny. That God seems to revel in physical. God doesn't create humanity by snatching some immortal soul out of the air, sticking it into a body, and forcing it to work the garden. God takes dust from the earth and breathes into the dust of the breath of life. God doesn't show us love from the wisp of a cloud or from a disembodied voice in the wilderness. God takes on the form of human flesh, comes into our world to be fully human and live and walk among us. And even after his death, it's not enough for the tomb to simply be empty. No, Jesus has to appear. It's not enough to hear that he's gone ahead of them. No, Jesus has to show up. It's not enough for Christ to be risen. No, Christ must be present. And you know this difference. It's the reason we don't just all stay in our respective homes and think about one another on Sunday morning, but instead show up here for worship, fellowship, and break bread together. It's the reason we don't just email the Lee family this morning, promise them we'll help raise their children, look them, their children in the eyes and promise and pledge to them, shoulder to shoulder, we will care for and love them. It's the reason we don't just memorize Bible verses and pray and think about God, but also visit one another in the hospital and show up with casseroles after death and loved ones. You tell me what's more important. To hear about your son's soccer game, or to be there to experience it. Sitting side by side with your significant other on a date, or Skyping from another state. Holding the loved one's hand when she dies. Or getting the call that she's passed away. Don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting we can be everywhere all the time. No, merely that faith isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's an embodied experience. How we think about our bodies, how we use them in this life, and even what we do with them in death. Isn't that what's printed on the back of our bulletins each and every Sunday? All are welcome here who seek to follow Jesus regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, age. Every body matters. His name was Ben Gore. I did his funeral in November of 2016, although he had died 73 years earlier. You see, Ben was a soldier during World War II, where he fought and died during the Battle of Tarawa. In the immediate aftermath of the battle, U.S. service members were buried in a number of battlefield cemeteries on the island. On February 28, 1949, the Military Review Board declared his remains unrecoverable, so a memorial service was conducted that same week. But in June of 2015, a non-governmental organization called History Flight discovered the burial site on Bayshore Island and recovered the remains of what they believed were 35 U.S. service members who fought during that battle in November. Ben's remains were among them. They were turned over to the government and were brought back to his hometown of Hopkinsville, Kentucky last year to be put in the Riverside Cemetery, placed and buried. What most impacted me about presiding at his funeral was not speaking about someone who had died 73 years earlier. Rather, the impact his coming home had on that community. As we drove down Main Street to the funeral processional, thousands of people lined the streets to pay respect to this man no one of them, ever knew. When we arrived at the cemetery, hundreds of people gathered around his body, even 73 years later. As you see, there was no greater way to honor what he had done with his body than for people to show up and be physically present in their bodies. Even telling you that story this morning is not the same as having been there and had that experience change you like it did me. And perhaps in the end, that's the point. God's transformative love cannot really be known without a physical presence. At least that's what I was reminded of yesterday. Before I left Columbus, Georgia, after attending the Regional Assembly to come here, I went for a run. A long, beautiful trail that lines the river there between Columbus and Phoenix City, Alabama. It's a beautiful day. People were out jogging, riding their bikes, walking together, lots and lots of people. Especially homeless people. I ran by folks sitting under underpasses with every object they owned stuffed into backpacks and plastic sacks. Some were fishing in the river, some bathing on the banks. Of course, none of them were exercising. If you're homeless, the only running you do is to the soup kitchen before it closes, or the shelter to meet curfew. And it occurred to me, I couldn't remember the last time I had seen that many homeless people at one time. When you live and work in Sandy Springs and East Cobb, you rarely see a police car, let alone any signs of real poverty. In fact, if you aren't intentional, you can almost forget such things exist. Maybe even disbelieve they're a problem to begin with. Yet there I was, and there they were, all of us together in the flesh. One of them was even broiling a fish. While I may have been listening to music, I could have sworn I heard one of them ask, "Sir, do you have anything to